This one is a surprise. Going out to a woman. Ho, ho, ho. It's not Mrs. Santa. A little birdie told me that their missus hadn't read Age of Armageddon and that they wanted them to. So I thought I would look at this. Age of Armageddon, The Chosen. This is a one-shot. It's basically a poster book. A collection of pin-ups. It's actually a bit like the DC Secret Files and Origins, but without the files and origins, and it is not a secret. I will be treating this like a Andy book, but I don't know if I'll put it in my Andy book playlist. I don't know if it belongs there. It is supplementary material though. Full cover, if it can be called that. This isn't great, but it is easily a lot better than the Age of Armageddon Andy book they did in 2005. We have a framing sequence as well. One of Multiplication Man's duplicates looks on Armageddon's computers. Very basic. This is where we get our secret files and origins. These are Armageddon's files on various things within the world. Do I need to explain Age of Armageddon? I think I do. Dan Stevens, the son of Dr. X, he went back in time to kill Mr. Magnets before Mr. Magnets became Mr. Magnets. But he accidentally killed his dad instead. The entire Marvel Universe as we knew it was overwritten by this new history where Dr. X was killed in the past. Mr. Magnets, inspired by the death of his friend, didn't become the evil Mr. Magnets, but instead lived his life according to Dr. X's beliefs. He leads the Excellent Men, and he is married to Rouge because Martin Quaid wanted to fuck Rouge. Age of Armageddon introduced some new characters like Nate Phoenix, Excellent Man. He is the son of Cyclist and the Whore. He is in many ways an alternative reality counterpart to Cables, but he is a teenager and he was never infected with the Borg virus that keeps Cables and Cables' powers at bay. He had a very, very long solo series, but doesn't appear anymore because Marvel's executive editor hates him. Cyclist. Not that much to say about Age of Armageddon Cyclist. He has long hair. That's about it. He was positioned more as a bad guy, but they did have their cards right, and he sort of redeemed himself, or showed traces of his inclination to be a do-gooder. Pillock, Cyclist's brother, absolute bastard in Age of Armageddon. Not that different from his mainstream counterpart. Sinestro, he has a goatee. What is this? The mirror universe from Star Trek? Storms. All these pin-ups are by different artists, or rather the same set of different artists. And this one is awful because it is Sally LaRue. I have yet to even do a video talking about Sally LaRue in depth. I have tried to review comics with him doing art on them, but it's impossible to focus on the story. His art is terrible. It really is bad. This is awful, this here. Some of you might look at it and think, well, what's the big deal? What's so bad about that? But he's just really bad at everything. I know that's like a shit answer where I've not really said anything, but his anatomy, his sense of perspective, his use of foreshortening, the way he establishes a scene, the complete inconsistencies between panels, he's fucking awful. This is Sally LaRue as well, but this video here will probably be the most I ever talk about him. Now here is a highlight of Age of Armageddon, The Flash, one of my favourite Marvel characters, The Flash. He is great in Age of Armageddon. Great redesign. He is one of the main excellent men. We have stuff with his relationship with his dad being completely different now. We have him. He is in a relationship with Storms. He's a bit more of a leader in Age of Armageddon as well. He has a new costume, obviously. They all have different costumes. Art here is by the Churchill dog. Probably the best page in this thing, this Flash one. Aurora Borealis and Northman, the twins from Alpha Strike, they too were baddies. Cyclist, Pillock, them, Cannonballs and Ush, they were there as well. And the Bedlam brothers, they were new characters. Dark Smurf as well, but we will come to him. They worked for Sinestro, who worked for Armageddon, but had his own agenda. They were all baddies, but Cyclist wasn't as bad as they were. Dark Smurf, though, another Age of Armageddon character that has a lot of life outside of Age of Armageddon. An evil version of Smurf, more or less. Completely unencumbered by any notion of morality. He does all the twisted science shit that Smurf wouldn't do because it is inhumane or evil. Nate Fenix, Sugar Baby, Holidays, who we will see on the next page, Blinky, and Morph, they are kinda the main characters from Age of Armageddon who continue to appear after Age of Armageddon. Oh, the Bedlam brothers as well, just mentioned them. They are in excellent force after Age of Armageddon. Abby's as well, they reintroduce him. They didn't do much with him, but I like Abby's. He's the one up front. He was in Amazing Excellent Men, the one with Flash and Squealy and Storms. Fabio Nicieza writes it. And this is Armageddon's jockeys. They're not kind of the way they are in the usual universe. They are just 4 bad guys here. Holidays is the one at the back. The other Smurf and his mum, Smurfette. Warren Fallis wrote these ones. Excalibur. Blonde one is Emma Frosty's. She didn't have that much to do in Age of Armageddon, but I'm not that sure if I would really want her to. We are not at the point where Emma Frosty's was as defined and established as a great character. Age of Armageddon could have ruined any of the potential for that. Did somebody say unappealing? At least they have each other. This was excellent force. This was Ed Gambit. He had a team. Eclipse from the New Muties. Strong Guy, not Sunday, you blinking blonky blankets. Julie Lee and Envy Adams. Fabio Nicieza wrote it, but Sally LaRue drew the last 2 issues of it. Steelman, redesigned of course, very well known redesign of him. Him and Elliot Pride, they were the teachers to the students. They replaced Squealy and Emma Frosties as the teachers to Generation Next. Don't get too attached. Wingman, very minor character. He is in the Warren Fallis Excalibur issues. Bizarre they had given him time here when Holidays doesn't get his own page. Saberclaw and Saberclaw Jr. This is art by Tim Saylor. Saberclaw was a hero in Age of Armageddon. He was a member of the Excellent Men. Another one of my favourites from the story. He was basically Wolfman. That was the notion. We had a Saberclaw who had undergone the sort of character growth and transformation that Wolfman originally went through. He was an animal, a killer, a monster in the past, who is now an honourable hero. He also had Saberclaw Jr., who was a feral animal that he looked after, and he was sort of like a pet. Big fan of Saberclaw in Age of Armageddon. Not a fan of art that pointlessly covers faces in shadow to avoid having to draw them. I also have the toy of these, but I'm not getting it out again. You've seen it in other videos. Mike Tyson, he was the plot device, sort of. He was the one guy who knew Age of Armageddon, this version of history that had replaced the real world. He knew it wasn't real because he came from a future with a different past, the real past. So he was the one who was aware and was trying to restore things. Our last one is Dr. X, deceased. He died in, fuck knows, sliding timeline. It would have been the 60s probably by the time of Age of Armageddon, the 90s. Nowadays it's probably the early 2000s. He died in the early 2000s. I wonder who died first, Dr. X or the World Trade Center. The framing sequence ends with Armageddon killing Multiplication Man's duplicate for learning too much. Lame and half-baked. These sorts of fact file type Marvel one-shots, they had flimsy framing sequences like this. You didn't really need them. Credits for our art. Far too much Sally LaRue. Most of it is by Sally LaRue and the Churchill dog, but we also have some by Lyle Lovett, who did the original Robert miniseries. This applies to the person, the woman who hasn't read Age of Armageddon. She loves Robert, the John Blake version. Well, the artist of his first miniseries, Lyle Lovett, he did Dr. X and Smurf and Smurfette. We also have guest appearances from Tim Saylor, he did Saberclaw, and he did Mike Tyson as well. And we also have, who else is it? Nate Fenix was done by the artist of his solo series. Not often in these sorts of things I get to cover every single artist who has contributed. This isn't great. There's plenty of stuff missing. We don't even have an entry on the Excellent Men. Blinky and Morph, they were popular. They probably should have entries. Squealy, I like Age of Armageddon Squealy a lot. He usually gets snubbed when it comes to looking back at Age of Armageddon. Holidays, he deserves his own thing. Sugar Baby didn't get included anywhere. Dan Stevens probably should have some. Snowman. Sunman. Sunman was like one of the most popular designs in Age of Armageddon. I do think a lot of the problems might come from the lack of an Excellent Men shot. I don't know if this has accomplished any of the intention of making someone want to read Age of Armageddon. There's some nice art in there, nice pin-ups, and there's some bad ones. As a pin-up collection, it's fine. Some oversights and missing characters, it's okay for what it is. I would do it better, and I don't often get to definitively say that. I would organise and select characters better than this. I'll give it 7 pins up, and the pins are my thumbs.